Imagine that in an instant, everything goes dark. Your heart stops beating. Your body lies still, yet you remain conscious. And then you see it. A tunnel of light, an unmistakable presence, a voice that resonates deep within your soul. This is exactly what happened to Samuel during a near-death experience. He was taken to a place where no lie can be hidden. A place where every soul will relive every action, every word, and every thought in vivid detail. But the most shocking part was what Jesus showed him: the judgment we will all face at the end of our lives. And what comes next depends on every choice we make. Stay until the end, because what you are about to hear could change the way you view your existence forever. I never thought the day would come when I would see my entire life flash before my eyes, not as a fleeting memory or a nostalgic thought, but with overwhelming clarity, feeling every moment as if I were living it all over again. But it didn't happen on earth. It was in a place where time does not exist and where all truth is revealed. My name is Samuel, and for a long time I was a skeptic. I grew up in a home where faith was something foreign, where life had to be explained through logic and facts. I didn't believe in anything beyond the tangible, until one day the impossible became my reality. It was an accident that brought me there. I remember the impact, the sound of metal crumpling, the sensation of my body losing control. Then silence and total darkness. I thought I was dead. There was no pain, no fear, just the strange feeling of being suspended in an infinite void. But then I felt something different, a presence. It wasn't something I could see with my eyes, but I could feel it in every part of my being. It was as if an indescribable love enveloped me, as if every fear, every doubt vanished instantly. And then I saw him. Jesus was there. His light was unlike that of the sun or any other I had ever seen before. It was not blinding. It did not burn. It simply filled everything with absolute peace. He looked at me, and without moving his lips, I knew exactly what he was saying. Come with me, there is something you must see. There was no time for questions. In an instant, everything changed. I was no longer in that emptiness, but in an indescribable place, a space that seemed infinite, where millions of lights floated around me. Each one was a soul, and they all moved towards the same direction. Then I understood. I was witnessing the final judgment, but it wasn't like how I had imagined it. There were no golden thrones or a celestial court. There were no arbitrary sentences or imposed punishments. It was something much deeper, more personal, and more real. Each soul, one by one, relived their entire life, not as a mere memory, but as if they were there again, feeling everything from a completely different perspective. They didn't just see what they had done, but also what they had caused in others. If they had ever hurt someone with words or actions, now they experienced that pain firsthand. If they had ever given love, they could feel it multiplied in an indescribable magnitude. I remained silent, observing how each soul underwent this process. I saw a man who in life had been cruel to his family. He thought his harsh words were just part of his character, that his indifference had no consequences. But now, in this judgment, he felt the suffering he had caused. He lived through the pain of his wife, weeping at night, the emptiness he left in his children's hearts, all that he had ignored. Now he experienced it as if it were his own flesh and blood. But I also saw souls who had lived with love. A woman who dedicated her life to helping others was surrounded by a warm light, experiencing the joy she had sown in every person she had helped. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, returned to her like an ocean of inexhaustible love. Jesus looked at me and spoke directly to my soul. Each person will go through this, not as punishment, but as revelation. Here, There are no deceptions, no excuses, only the truth. I couldn't help but think of my own life. What would I see if I were in their place? How much love had I given? How much harm had I caused without realizing it? I felt a shiver run down my spine. In that moment, I understood that this judgment was not imposed by an external being, but that each soul faced its own truth, and the most terrifying part was that no one could escape it. Jesus extended his hand. In a blink, I found myself face to face with something that chilled my blood. It was my own life, but not as I remembered it, not with the nuances my mind had shaped over time. It was the absolute truth, stripped of justifications or self-deception. I saw each moment from a perspective I had never considered, not just through my own eyes, but through those of the people I had affected. The first thing I saw were my childhood days. I saw my mother holding me in her arms, singing to me gently while I closed my eyes against her chest. I felt her love, her sacrifice, the sleepless nights spent worrying about me. But then, I also saw the moments when I responded with indifference. The times my impatience hurt her without me even noticing. In that instant, I felt her pain as if it were my own. As the scenes progressed, I saw myself in my youth. I recalled times when I acted arrogantly, believing I was right, not caring about the impact of my words. But this time I didn't just see what I had done, I saw what I had caused. I felt the sadness of those I had treated with disdain, the insecurity I left in hearts that trusted me. Every word, spoken in anger, was like a sharp edge, piercing my own soul. The judgment continued. I saw myself in adulthood, in arguments with friends and family, in moments when I chose comfort over kindness, in opportunities where I could have helped someone, but simply decided to ignore it. Each of those decisions, no matter how insignificant they seemed at the time, now weighed like mountains. But it wasn't all suffering. I also saw the moments when I had been a light for someone. I saw how a simple word of encouragement I gave to a stranger changed their day and motivated them to keep going. I saw the smile of a child I helped without a second thought, and felt the warmth that act had left in their heart. In that moment, I understood something I had never fully grasped before. Every action, no matter how small, has a much greater impact than we imagine. Jesus remained by my side, watching without judgment. His gaze was not one of condemnation, but of infinite compassion. Every soul will go through this, he said softly, not as punishment, but as understanding. Here there are no secrets, only the truth each one needs to see. The words echoed in my mind as the vision continued. I found myself in my last days before the accident, caught up in trivial worries, clinging to things that now seemed insignificant. I realized how much time I had wasted on things that didn't matter, how much love I had left unexpressed, how many opportunities to do good had passed me by without me even noticing. The pain of this realization was profound, not because someone was punishing me, but because escaping the truth was impossible. In that place, everything was laid bare. Every decision, every thought, every hidden emotion. There were no masks, no excuses, just what had truly been. Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder, and in that moment, I felt an immense love that made me unable to hold back my tears. "It's not too late," he said in a firm but tender voice. "There is always an opportunity to change." Suddenly, everything changed again. The scenery faded, and I found myself in a new place, a realm that seemed beyond human understanding. There, before me, were countless souls, and what I saw next took my breath away. Before my eyes stretched an immense space illuminated by a light that seemed to come from everywhere. But the most astonishing thing was not the environment, but the souls that were there. They were countless, an infinite multitude, who seemed to be going. Each one was reliving their life, feeling the impact of their actions, seeing the truth with absolute clarity. Some cried, others smiled with gratitude, and struggles remained in deep silence, as if they were absorbing what they had discovered. I could feel their emotions as if I were part of a whole. I experienced their regret, their joy, their pain, and their redemption. Jesus looked at me sweetly and pointed to a group of souls that shone with a bright, golden light. These are the souls that lived with love, that did good without expecting anything in return, who understood their purpose and fulfilled it, seemed to call them with an infinite love. Then Jesus turned his gaze to another group. These souls did not shine with the same intensity. Some appeared confused. Others were consumed by deep sadness. Those are the ones who did not fully live their purpose, who wasted opportunities, who let love slip away out of fear or selfishness. There was no condemnation in their faces, only a painful understanding of what they could have done but didn't. But what I saw next shook me to my core. In the distance, there were souls wrapped in shadows. They were not physical shadows, but a dense darkness that seemed to come from their very being. These are the souls that refuse to accept the light, Jesus said in a tone of infinite sadness. Those who lived only for themselves, who harmed others without remorse, who rejected love and clung to hate and ambition. I saw how these souls twisted in their own suffering. There was no fire or external punishments, but the unbearable weight of what they had done, the lives they had negatively affected, the love they had rejected. It was not a condemnation imposed by God, but a reflection of their own choices. Each soul judges itself, Jesus said. There is no court, no punishment dictated from outside. Here, everyone feels what they made others feel. Every tear you caused, every smile you gave, every act of love or cruelty, it all comes back. I then understood that the final judgment was not a judgment in the human sense. It was not a court where sentences were handed down, but a mirror, a process of revelation, where each soul saw the truth of its existence with a clarity that was impossible to ignore. There were no deceptions, no way to justify one's actions, only pure, unalterable truth. Jesus showed me more. I saw how some souls that had lived in darkness began to change. I saw how, when facing the truth, some found genuine repentance and were surrounded by a light that helped them heal. Others, however, resisted, clinging to their pride, unable to accept the love that was offered to them. There is always hope, Jesus told me, but each soul must choose. I remained silent, absorbing everything I had seen. I understood that love was the key to everything, that there was no divine punishment, but a process of learning, of self-discovery, of healing. I realized that what we do in life matters more than we can imagine, that every action leaves an indelible mark on our soul and on those of others. And then Jesus looked at me with infinite depth and said something that changed everything. It is not your time yet. You must return. I felt a shiver run through me. To return to life. But before I could react, everything began to fade. The place where I was, the souls, the light, everything started to drift away, as if I was being pulled by an invisible force. And in an instant I felt my body again. The pain, the heaviness, the labored breathing. I opened my eyes suddenly and heard voices around me. I was back, but something inside me had changed forever. My body was there, but my mind was still trapped in what I had just experienced. I felt a heavy weight on my chest, as if I had just awakened from a dream that was too real, one from which I didn't want to escape. I looked around. I was in a hospital room, with the sound of monitors recording my vital signs. I didn't understand how much time had passed or how I had returned, but I knew it for certain. I was not the same as before. The images of the judgment were still etched in my mind with impossible clarity. Each soul, each emotion, each revelation burned within me like a fire I could not ignore. I knew it hadn't been a dream, that what I saw was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced in my life. And now, with my heart beating again in my chest, I understood that I could not continue living the same way. Days passed before I could talk about what I had experienced. The doctors were amazed by my recovery. They said I had been on the brink of death, and that my return was nothing short of a miracle. But I knew it was not just a miracle. It was a second chance, a chance to live with purpose, with love, with the awareness that each of my actions would leave a mark on my soul. The problem was how to talk about something like that. How to explain what I had seen without sounding like I was delirious. Even I, who had experienced it, had moments when I wondered if anyone else could understand. But within me, a voice firmly whispered, "You must tell what you saw." At first, I only shared it with my family. I remember my mother's expression when I told her, "I saw the judgment of souls. I saw what Jesus showed me." Her face turned pale, her eyes filled with tears, and she placed a hand on her chest as if my story had touched something deep within her soul. "God gave you a second chance," she murmured, her voice trembling. My siblings listened to me in silence, without interrupting, without asking questions, simply absorbing every word. And when I finished, I knew, even though they might not fully understand, something in them had also changed. But the greatest transformation took place within me. I couldn't just go back to my old life, to my old worries as if nothing had happened. I knew I had returned for a reason, and that I had to share what I had seen not out of ego or the desire for attention, but because someone, somewhere, needed to hear it. Jesus had shown me the truth about the final judgment, not as a condemnation, but as a revelation, like the opportunity to see our lives with total clarity and understand the impact of every action. He had shown me that love was the only law that governed everything, that every soul would face the truth of what they had done, not for punishment, but to learn. I wondered if everyone knew this, if everyone understood that there was no way to hide from our own actions. Would we change the way we live? The weight of that question haunted me day and night, and the only answer I found was that I had to try. So I began to speak, first in small conversations, then in larger groups. My story spread beyond what I imagined. Some people listened to me skeptically, others with astonishment. But what mattered was not the reaction of others, but the message. Because, even though many doubted my experience, the words that Jesus had told me remained true, and that truth deserved to be shared. It was then that I understood something even deeper. Life is a gift, not because it is eternal on earth, but because it is our opportunity to choose who we want to be. Every day, every interaction, every decision is part of our own judgment, the reflection we will eventually see when our time to depart arrived. And now that I had returned, I was absolutely certain that my purpose was to live with love, with awareness, and with the mission of reminding others that what we do here matters more than we could ever imagine. Days passed, and my body was recovering, but my soul continued to burn with the truth of what I had seen. I tried to lead a normal life, but nothing inside me felt normal. It was as if the experience had imprinted an urgency on me that I couldn't ignore. I looked at the people around me and wondered if they ever thought about what lies beyond this life, if they knew that one day I would relive each moment with an undeniable clarity. The judgment wasn't a punishment, but rather a revelation, and that filled me with both hope and fear. Hope because it meant that we all had the potential to understand, to learn, to grow. Fear, because many lived without giving it a thought, unaware that every act of love, every word of encouragement, and every wound they inflicted on others was etched into their own soul. I realized that I couldn't keep living the same way. I began to analyze my own actions, my thoughts, my intentions. I discovered that although I had always considered myself a good person, there were moments when my ego, indifference, or lack of love had led me to act selfishly. I saw my mistakes reflected in the way I spoke to others, in small gestures of impatience, and in the times I wasn't present when someone needed me. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose my present. And with that certainty, I decided to do something about it. I started visiting hospitals and aid centers. At first, I didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt the need to be with people who were on the edge of life and death. I wanted to share with them what I had seen, but I also wanted to listen to them, to know what they felt, what they feared, what they hoped for on the other side. One day, I met an elderly man who hadn't received any visitors for weeks. He looked fragile, with a distant gaze, fixed on a point in the room. I sat beside him, and for reasons I didn't fully understand, I took his hand. "Are you afraid?" I asked softly. The man took a few seconds to respond. His lips trembled slightly as he murmured, "Not completely. I just wonder if I did enough." I felt a lump in my throat because I understood exactly what he meant. I looked him in the eyes and, without thinking too much, I told him what I had seen. I spoke to him about the judgment, about the infinite love of Jesus, about how each soul relives their actions and understands their impact. As I spoke, I noticed his expression change. His eyes, once filled with uncertainty, seemed to light up with a peace I had never seen in them before. "So, there's no punishment?" he whispered. I shook my head. "Not as we imagine it, just the truth of what we've done, but also the opportunity to understand it, to heal, to forgive." The old man gripped my hand tighter, and for the first time since I arrived, smiled. "Thank you," he said with a sigh. "That's all I needed to hear." That night, he departed from this world, and I realized that my mission was not just to share my experience, but to help others find peace before crossing the threshold. Over time, I came to understand that many people lived in fear, not just of death, but of the judgment they would face afterward. But I had seen what really happens. I had seen that all that matters is love. That changed everything. It didn't matter how much money, success, or recognition one had. The worldly concerns that consumed us day after day were insignificant. The only thing that truly mattered was how much we had loved, how much we had helped, how deeply we had left a positive mark on others. And now that I knew that for sure, I understood that my life had to be aligned with that truth. I couldn't stay silent. I had to do something greater. My life was never the same after what I witnessed, after what Jesus showed me. I understood that I couldn't continue living in the same way. I knew I hadn't been sent back just to resume my daily routine, but to share what I had learned. Above all, to live according to that truth. I spent weeks in reflection, questioning every word, every thought. It leaves a mark on our soul, and one day, sooner or later, we will have to face that truth. Over time, I began speaking with more people about what I experienced. Not everyone believed me, and I understood that. I would have been skeptical myself before having gone through it. But I also found many people who had had similar experiences and who, out of fear of ridicule, had never shared them. Together, we began to uncover the incredible. There weren't just a few of us. There were thousands, maybe millions of people around the world who had seen the same thing, who had felt that same light, that same love, and that same revelation. One day, while I was walking in the park, I saw a woman sitting alone on a bench, staring into space. Something about her expression felt familiar to me. I approached her cautiously and asked if she was okay. She looked up, and in her eyes I saw the reflection of an internal battle that she couldn't express in words. "No one believes me," she whispered. After a long silence, I sat down next to her and waited. "I had an accident months ago," she continued. "I was in a coma for 3 days. I saw something I can't explain. I felt immense peace. I saw people who had already passed away. I heard words that I don't completely remember, but which filled me with love. Seemed so empty, as if I no longer belonged here. My heart ached. I knew exactly how she felt. "I understand you," I said softly. "You're not alone." She looked at me in surprise, as if for the first time in a long time someone truly understood her. Then I shared my story. I told her about the judgment that Jesus showed me, about how every soul revisits its actions and understands their impact. I told her that what she had experienced was not a mistake or an hallucination, but a truth that many people have seen, though few dare to share. In the end, her eyes were filled with tears, but not of sadness, rather of relief. "Thank you." I didn't know how much I needed to hear this, and in that moment, I knew I was on the right path. From then on, my purpose became clear. I had to not only share my story, but also help others understand what lies beyond, to lose their fear, and to live with the certainty that every action matters. It wasn't easy. Many times I doubted. Many times I wondered if I was really making a difference. But every time I saw someone find peace, every time a person told me my testimony had helped them change their life, I understood it was worth it. Jesus showed me that judgment is not a punishment, but an opportunity to understand ourselves, to grow. It showed me that we are not here by chance, that every life has a purpose, and that in the end, what truly matters is the love we give and the legacy we leave behind. Now, each day is a new beginning. I don't know how much time I have left in this world, but I do know that when my time comes, when I stand once again in front of that light, I want to look back and know that I lived according to the truth that was revealed to me. If anything you've heard resonates with you, if at any moment during this story you felt there's something beyond what we see, I invite you to reflect on your own life. Don't wait until it's too late to love more, to forgive more, to help more, because one day we will all go through this process. And when that moment comes, the only thing we will take with us is what we have given. So choose wisely, because every soul will see it. If this story made you think, like it and subscribe to keep discovering impactful testimonies like this one. Share this video because someone else might need to hear this message today. And let us know in the comments what you think about the final judgment. Do you believe our actions in life truly follow us after death? Now click on the video on your screen and keep exploring more stories that will reveal what lies beyond this life. See you there.